Welcome to the show. It's Happy Nation Sports Talk. We are up and rolling into a brand new week. Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. Happy Dingus Day, my friend.
Thank you. I celebrated by, wearing a bright colored shirt, ready to roll. It's a non-pen. I got a lot of comments on the fact.
It's kind of the most Dingus-y shirt you probably have. It's like you don't usually wear those kind of shirts.
I know. And I left it untucked. It looked like my one buddy said, all you need is the hat and a cigar. You look like you belong in Cuba. I was like, all right, let's roll. I get the khaki pants, the untucked, button up, short sleeve shirt. Mm-hmm. I'm on vacation, baby, in my mind. It's like it's already summer break.
Yes.
That's where I'm at.
For those unfamiliar with Dingus Day, it's very big. There are very few communities that actually celebrate Dingus Day. Apparently, Buffalo, New York is the biggest one. South Bend is maybe the next biggest one, but it's like it's many consider it like the Polish St. Patrick's Day. Basically, it's the Monday after Easter where people basically kind of, like you purge yourself of all the restrictions that you had during Lent and you eat a bunch of Polish sausage and drink beer and, that kind of thing. So I haven't partaken in a Dingus Day in a long time.
I don't think I ever have because I'm always in school, whether as a student or whether as a teacher. We don't get Dingus Day off. My daughter tried to convince everybody that today was a holiday and we shouldn't go to school. So that was a thing. But I, growing up in this area, obviously Dingus Day has always been a thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it wasn't a thing everywhere until I became an adult. Like I had no idea that this was like an isolated thing.
Coming from other places, from some places other than here, it was like, oh, this is a thing, it's the
because it's huge for politics and the politicians.
That's kind of like the politicians will, like the different, the VFWs and the, some of the union halls and that kind of things, they'll celebrate Dingus Day in there, and the politicians will kind of make their rounds and all that.
Yep, they're out there.
Mike says LaPorte as well.
Okay.
I guess not surprising. LaPorte's not that far from South Bend, but yeah.
See, Tommy, never heard of Dingus Day. Well, my friend, better read up.
You don't have a big enough Polish population. There is, I think that's probably what would surprise most people about South Bend. If you're not from here, is there is a huge Polish population. Yeah, here in and around South Bend. So
Washington High School used to be a huge Polish influx. Population. There were a lot of skis out there and a lot of
skis.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just there was a lot of
Polish skis. I know skis.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of really good, tough nose. That's why they had such good football teams back then.
Right.
And you combine those with the other kids that were going there, and they had really good athletic teams. And those kids and Holy Families out there, a lot of good Polish, names going to Holy Family, and then they would matriculate to Washington, and it's just kind of changed a little bit. The population has changed, but they're still out and they still dingus. So there you go.
All right, baby.
They're dingusing.
Get your dingus on. Get your dingus on. I've noticed some new names popping into the chat, like Gregory Gilbert. That an Irish spelling of Gregory, and reminding everybody to hit that like button.
So I'm not laughing at Gregory. I'm laughing at Father David, who says he got on just in time to hear that I don't like Polish people. I can tell you that my wife is very Polish. So.
You say, do you want to just say it?
She had a ski name. So
his father-in-law's name is Chuck Konopinski. So there you go.
I love the Polish people. Come on. Love them.
That's right.
Well, we don't dingus, though. So I don't know. They kind of grew up in Michigan. So I don't know if they don't dingus up there. I don't know. I probably asked that question. I don't know.
It's probably been a good 20 years since I did any dingusing myself. It was back when I worked at the first radio station.
I was going to ask,
one of those hey, everybody let's go out to lunch and do the dingus, that kind of thing. So
exactly.
Well, today, Vince, I kind of feel like ESPN talking about Cowboys or Lakers. We're playing the hits. We're gonna talk a little Notre Dame quarterback once again today. What the heck?
It's still in the news.
Still talking about it. So let's do it, baby.
We might as well tap on into it. And it's like a tree that just keeps giving maple syrup. You know what I mean? You just keep tapping in.
Right.
It's all good.
That's right. So, I mean, we know it's going to be either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey.
Yes.
When the Irish open up the season, August 31st at Miami. So, are you more excited or nervous at the prospect of having a first-time starter in the season opener now?
Well, I'm very excited because of the talent level that will be behind center. Okay. And I know whoever it is, it's going to be their first time and all of those things. And I get that. And I understand the fan base trepidation when it comes to a first time starter. Like I get it. But at the same time, Notre Dame hasn't lined up a quarterback with this kind of talent in so long. And it doesn't matter whether it's Carr, it doesn't matter whether it's Minchey. It doesn't matter to me. Whoever it is going to have an abundance of talent, and they're going to put it on display on August 31st. And that's what gets me excited. And you're going to see an offense, again, regardless of who it is, you're going to see an offense that is more dynamic than any offense that you've seen come out of Notre Dame in quite a while. That's exciting, man. Like that's exciting. And then you just pair that up with this defense that they're going to have too. I'm very excited.
I'm the same. Like I think I was more nervous in 2022 when Tyler Buchner made his first start, when they went to Ohio State. Has it already been 3 years? Speaking, by the way,
going to Ohio State,
we're going on 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Definitely more nervous for that. And I mean, when you think about it, things actually, like for Buchner specifically, it's not like Buchner was the reason that Notre Dame lost that game. I mean, there was
a lot going on in that game.
A lot of other things happening.
A bit of an avalanche, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly right. So I'm a lot more excited about this one, because again, like when you look at where the quarterback room has gone from that time, and, it was Tyler Buchner and then Drew Pine, and Steve Angeli as a true freshman was the number 3. And when you look at where they are now, essentially, if Angeli had stayed, he still would have been the number 3. And now you've got Carr and Minchey up ahead of him. And one of these guys, I mean, we've seen the talent that they've got. And the talent that's around them and on both sides of the ball, not just offensively, that the guys who the quarterback are going to have to work with on the other side of the ball as well. Like it's a different program now 3 years later than what it was then. And that's why I'm so excited. This is almost like kicking off the Marcus Freeman era 2.0, coming out of a national championship game, you're going on the road and you've got a chance to really unveil this shiny new toy to the entire world. Like this is why when all that talk was going on in the spring, this is what we were so confident in. So to me, it's like really exciting that they're going to get to do that.
I feel like we've seen, Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr really do some pretty darn close to amazing things in practice. And granted, our window has not been huge in the amount of time that they have both been on campus, but these kids have talent, man. Like these kids have talent, and they're going to be able to move this offense differently. Look, I'm not taking anything away from Riley Leonard because he moved the offense differently than what it's going to look like this year. And he's a winner, and he doesn't necessarily, check all those quarterback boxes. But dude, put the ball in his hands, he's going to win the game. He's going to get you the first down. He's going to do all of those things, right? It's going to look so much different. It's going to look like you've got a very skilled quarterback back there that's reading defenses, that's putting the ball where it needs to be put, going to make these receivers look good. And you add on to that a really good offensive line and a top-notch running game. And, the sky's the limit for this offense. So it's very exciting. I can tell you, like, there's obviously a lot of people out there, in social media land that, they're Miami fans and you're coming to the Rock or whatever that kid was saying that was really going back and forth with some people.
I guess I missed that. I saw some people. Is that the one that Trevor went after or something?
Oh, yeah.
First time starting quarterback and that kind of thing?
That
Okay.
guy. Here's how I think it's going to play out. I don't know that I'm convinced that Carson Beck is going to be healthy when even by the first game. And so that will diminish everything about this game. Like if Notre Dame goes out there and does what I think they're going to do, regardless of who the quarterback is, by the way, I think they're going to go out and win this game pretty handily. And then, Carson Beck wasn't the quarterback, and Miami's not the Miami of old, and blah, everything will get downplayed. And then we get to go into the bye week just talking about how, it was basically Miami's JV team or something like that. Like, that's what's going to happen. It's not going to be, I just don't think it's going to be this big game that everybody thinks it's going to be. It's not 1987. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't know. I think you're kind of discounting it because it's the season opener.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of excitement. Now, should this Miami team be as good as last year's Texas A&M team? I don't think, especially in the trenches, no.
Right.
Carson Beck's health is going to be a huge factor from the Miami perspective. If Beck is not able to go, that's going to be huge. If Beck is able to go, Miami's going to have a much better quarterback starting for them and a much more experienced quarterback starting for them than what A&M had last year to start off the season on the road. What the rest of their roster looks like, I don't know, but I'm relatively confident they'll have at least a decent amount of skill talent. Now, I do still think that Cam Ward, basically their whole team was Cam Ward last year.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I will concede that. But just in terms of at least early on, Notre Dame is going into what's going to be a pretty hostile environment. It's ultimately up to CJ Carr and the rest of the team to kind of take them, take the crowd out of that as much as possible. Things snowballed the last time Notre Dame was there. That was a different situation. And that's why, the environment ultimately, played as big a part as anything in Notre Dame losing that game. But gosh, has that really been? How many years has that been?
2017, I thought.
That's what I was thinking as well. 17. Has it really been 8 years already? Man.
I mean, look, that was a horror show. If you're a Notre Dame fan, that was a horror show. They walked into a nightmare. No doubt about it. Like, it was an absolute nightmare. But they were also, Miami was undefeated and they had the turnover chain and they had a lot of momentum. And I realized they won't have lost any games going into that game. And there's probably going to be that offseason momentum and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the thing. It's a season opener. So everyone's going to be fired up. And it is Notre Dame, coming down there and the whole thing.
Their defense was average at best last year. And
that's true.
And their offense was all Cam Ward. And I realize they have probably gone to the portal and they've done some different things and, all of those things. I get it. I don't know. I don't see all the hype. I don't see it. I'm much more worried about the Texas A&M game a few weeks later or the USC game in the middle of the season than I am about the Miami game. That's what I'll say. But I'm excited. I think his offense is going to be dynamic.
Vince is confident.
I am.
Michael says, I know this doesn't make sense, but I don't discount the fact that Notre Dame won in comeback fashion in that stadium, the same one that they're playing in on August 31st. And they did, of course, in the semifinal against Penn State. And I think that even though it'll be a different environment because now it's a home crowd for Miami versus that was a neutral site game, where you had both Penn State and Notre Dame fans down there. So the vibe is definitely going to be different, but I do think that it helps from Notre Dame's perspective that so many guys on the roster have at least played in that building before. Yes. And I think that will give them some, kind of some confidence, I guess, going in.
Notre Dame's 1-0 in that building in 2025, and Miami hasn't even set foot on the field in 2025. So, I don't think this group of Notre Dame players that are going to be on this roster are undefeated in that building. You can't really say that about anybody that plays for Miami.
Spencer Kane Music. Would you be more confident with a second-year starting Riley Leonard or first-year CJ Carr?
It's a great question, Spencer, because you know what you're going to get with Riley Leonard. And like I said, he's a winner. He finds a way to win the game. I guess more confident. I guess I'll say Riley because like I said, I know what I'm going to get, and CJ could make some rookie mistakes. I mean, that's definitely possible. I think they both lead a Notre Dame team to victory. And I think they're going to do it in diametrically different ways, is what I would gather, what I would predict. But how do you not go with the veteran kid who just took your team to a national championship? I mean, I would be more confident if Riley Leonard was behind center, but that does not take away from my confidence of CJ Carr being behind center. Does that make sense? I know it's a kind of a fence-sitting answer, but I did answer it. Riley Leonard is the answer.
I would be more like if Riley Leonard were still here, I would be completely. I would be more confident because he just took him to a freaking national championship game, and then led a comeback at the end of the national championship game that looked like they were going to get just blown out, and they came right back. We know Riley Leonard's a leader. We know that he can win football games. So I would definitely be more confident in a guy like him who's got close to 30, somewhere around 30 starts in his career versus one start. But we do know that CJ Carr is talented. And this is a point that I was going to bring up before as well. Like the other thing with Riley Leonard was obviously where Notre Dame ended up at the end of the season. There was that curve over the course of the season where Riley Leonard, Mike Denbrock, Gino Guidugli were all still sort of getting comfortable with each other. It's called NIU growing pains, right? Like once they got past that, and once they hit that stride in the middle of October, like Mike Denbrock said they would before the season ever started, things started to look a lot different as the season went along. I think one advantage that both Carr and Minchey have is the fact that this is their second year now, in that offense. And they have had Gino Guidugli, both of them as long as they have been here, but they've been in Mike Denbrock's system. And so there's like from both aspects, there's not going to be that feeling out process. Like Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli know the strengths and weaknesses of both of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, good call.
Going into this season, whereas it took a few games for them to figure all that out with Riley Leonard and Leonard vice versa with them. So I think that even though these, first time starter, whoever it ends up being, I think that's a big advantage for both the quarterback and the coaching staff, that they're going to have a completely different kind of game plan, going in as a result of that, the fact that they've been together for so long.
And I think you would see a bit of a different offense even if Riley Leonard was the quarterback, because he'd be going into year two. And like you said, there would not be a feeling out period by Denbrock and Guidugli for what Riley Leonard can do. Look, we saw Riley Leonard throw the ball around, right? I mean, they kind of took the cap off the offense towards the end of that Ohio State game, and he was chucking it all over the field, right? So, I mean, I think if Riley Leonard was going to stick around for another year, or if he had the ability to stick around for another year, and we can debate till the cows come home if Notre Dame would have said yes, or if he would have done it, or whatever. Like, that doesn't matter. The hypothetical here is if Riley Leonard was coming back for a second year at Notre Dame in this offense with the same coaching staff, I think you see a more dynamic offense as well, right, than we saw last year. Because remember, Mike Denbrock said during fall camp last year, you're not going to see this offense and what it can do until at least halfway through the season. And we're all like, okay, we'll see.
Well, look,
that was pretty true.
Jaden Daniels from year one to year two at LSU was a completely different quarterback. Again, just because his first year at LSU, he was coming over from Arizona State, and he was decent,
right? But he wasn't
nowhere near what he was the next year.
Exactly. Yeah. So just everybody put this in their memory banks for now. You're gonna have if CJ Carr ends up being the starter, or Kenny Minchey, either one, they're most likely going to be the quarterback for the next 2 seasons. And as long as Mike Denbrock doesn't leave, right, and as long as Marcus Freeman doesn't leave, get everybody freaking out now. You're going to see one of these guys in their second year next year. I'm not saying discount 25, but man, 26 could be pretty freaking special too. So one of these guys is going to get 2 years under this regime, and I am fired up and excited about it.
Good question from Christopher too. Would we be number one in the early polls if Riley Leonard was back at quarterback? I think Notre Dame probably would be preseason number one.
Yeah, you got a great shot at it. I mean, look, you're still going to get your Ohio States and your Georgias and because they just have name recognition and they've won a title in the last 5 years, right? Like you're gonna get those. They be in the discussion, and I think they would be consistently top 3. I don't know where Notre Dame is now.
I mean, you've got Jeremiah Love coming. Love and Price in the backfield, and Jaden Greathouse, and Jordan Faison, obviously. And you would have, this is the hypothetical, obviously, and you would have Riley Leonard, you would have virtually the entire offensive line coming back. You'd have some questions on defense, but at the same time, you have, you have a Don Schuler coming back. You have Drake Bowen. You have KVA. You have Leonard Moore. You have Christian Gray. The biggest questions are going to be with the defensive line, no matter what. But you have Bryce Young, so that's 6 significant guys. Josh Burnham, 7 right there. And obviously, like the other side, you're kind of waiting on, to see who's available based on injuries and that kind of stuff. And then, with the interior,
you can make a heck
at
of a
least
case.
you have, yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know how good and or bad or whatever the starting quarterback for Notre Dame is going to be. It's a giant question mark, right? And, if you talk to a lot of people, they all thought Angeli was going to start the season, right? They all thought, oh, well, he's going to start at Miami and he's going to start at Texas A&M and then eventually Carr will take over. That's what's going to happen. That's not the case. So now
don't get too nasty here, Vince. Don't get too nasty.
It has nothing to do with Angeli. It just has to do with people analyzing the situation and not doing a very good job of it, in my opinion. And so now you've got a giant question mark when it comes to quarterback for Notre Dame because everybody discounted what those guys could be and will be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Anthony, thank you for the super chat, as always. Much appreciated.
Brian's already discounting Angeli.
Oh, boy.
I had to remind Brian that Carr was not the first one out there with the starting offensive line. That was Steve. He got first crack at it. He's like, I already forgot about him. I was like, all right. My bad.
Decaf wants to know if Notre Dame's a preseason top 5. I mean,
they should be. I mean, I haven't. Like, it's April.
The thing is, we've still got, there's still so much transfer portal stuff going on.
Yes.
And like, I think that's going to be, that makes, it's going to continue to make it hard every year for, people to really have a firm grasp of what a team really is. And I think that, again, like so much of it goes to what do you have at quarterback? What's your experience at quarterback? Like personally, I think Notre Dame is a preseason top 5 team. But the biggest question now is quarterback because you have so little experience at the position, So like what people externally are going to think of Notre Dame as a result, like those first 2 games at Miami and Texas A&M are going to go a long way. Like at the very least, like I'd be completely satisfied if Notre Dame is just somewhere around the top 10, win those couple of games because they're both going to be high profile primetime games, and then people get impressed and you rise up the charts. So I'd be completely fine with that.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if they're number 1, great. If they're not, it's okay because it doesn't matter what you are in April. Yeah, obviously it matters what you are in January, right? So and they just take care of their own business at that point. So as long as you're within striking distance to start the season, that's all I care about. I mean, do I think that they belong in the top 5? I do. I think they have enough talent coming back. They've got a dynamic head coach.
Again, when you look at how much is coming back.
Yeah. I mean, they deserve to be in the top 5. So I'll ballpark it and say they belong in the top 5. I'm not going to argue semantics about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't care. You know what I mean? Because they're going to have plenty of opportunities to move up. So they'll be fine. I mean, they lost at Northern Illinois last year, fell like a rock, and then slowly worked their way back up.
Here's my guess, because I'm trying to think. Okay, Oregon lost their starting quarterback. Right? I'm thinking about playoff teams now.
Okay,
Texas is obviously
they belong probably
have
up
Manning.
there too. Yeah.
I'm guessing Texas Manning, Penn State. You got Aller coming back, and a lot of guys on that team as well. Boise State's not going to be in there. SMU's not going to be in there. Clemson's not going to be. Clemson might be around the top 10 because they were in the playoffs.
A lot of love for Klubnik, man.
Yeah.
A lot of love
because again, like if you go by quarterback, so yeah, you're probably right. I bet Clemson's a top 5 team because of last year. My guess is Texas is number 1, Penn State is number 2. And then Clemson might be as high as number 3.
They very well could be.
Again, because I'm going off who was in the playoffs last year, who's got quarterbacks coming back, and those three all fit that bill. And so as a result, they're all going to be very well regarded in preseason rankings.
Yes.
My guess is Notre Dame shows up somewhere between 5 and 7.
Okay.
Would be my guess. 5. I'll actually expand that a little bit, between 5 and 8, because again, the biggest question is going to be the quarterback.
I'll say 4 and 6 is where they should end up, but I'll keep a range as well because again, all the analysts are going to say is that they ran Angeli out of town and they don't know what's going to happen at quarterback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's going to be, oh man, they got rid of the guy with the most experience. Now we don't know what they're going to have.
I forgot about Georgia. Georgia's going to be in that mix. Alabama's going to be way overrated. You can count on that. Even though they're losing their quarterback, they're going to be.
Doesn't matter.
Again, like they're still getting all the love based on if, as if Nick Saban was.
And all of that might push Notre Dame down. Like that's absolutely a possibility because everybody's going to forget the fact that Notre Dame was in the national championship game.
Right.
They're gonna forget that and that they beat Georgia and Penn State on the way to the national champion. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna forget about that. It's not gonna matter.
Yeah. Malachi Fields, obviously, we all feel like he's going to be a big producer. Someone's asking about him, but Malachi Fields isn't enough. Like that's going to like if the question is specific to how Notre Dame is perceived, like Malachi Fields isn't going to sway that enough. Like,
I've seen a lot of people value him very highly when it comes to, transfer portal wide receivers and, things like that. I get that. We'll see what I just don't think it's going to move the needle from a national team perspective, though, because, the knock on Notre Dame is it doesn't matter what wide receivers they have. They can't get them the football. I mean, you know what I mean?
And that's what this quarterback has to solve now.
Absolutely.
That's
100%.
The next step in this evolution, right?
100%. Yes. Yep. And it's a mantle I think both Minchey and Carr are willing to wear. Like they're ready for it.
So what do you think about this? Like, do you have any issue with the fact that where Notre Dame is right now? And obviously, when you look at what the staff, was obviously like what their mindset probably was, and the fact that now you are going to have a first-time starter at quarterback, and for 2 years, first you went to the transfer portal and got Sam Hartman because they didn't feel like what was in the room was adequate enough to start. Then you went out and did the same thing the next year with Riley Leonard because you didn't feel like what was in the room was going to be good enough to start. And then now, and like the feeling, obviously the feeling is, okay, what's good enough in the room? So like, do you have any issue with the fact that neither one of these guys who's now going to be the starter was getting number 2 reps last year, and Angeli, who's obviously in the portal, was the guy getting those?
I mean, in a perfect world, you would have loved to see one of those 2 guys get more reps, obviously, in practice. But at the end of the day, I mean, no, I don't think it makes that much of a difference because, look, there's a narrative out there, or there's a thought process out there that Angeli was better than the other 2. That's why he was the number 2 quarterback. And in the moment when you add up all the intangibles and all of the things, then he was a better number 2 quarterback than those other 2 guys were, right?
That's how I feel. Like in the moment, he was the best option. And for all the defenders of, Angeli who continue to point it out, I mean, we obviously saw that. Right?
Yeah,
when they needed him.
Absolutely. He's a great backup.
He was able to go out there and perform in that situation. That's why you valued him as a number 2 guy.
And I would probably, if he stuck around and you still had these 3 guys, I might still make him the number 2 guy, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Just because he's not fazed by the moment, right? The problem, well, I'm not going to get into that. We've talked about that enough. I'm just going to say.
Yeah, you don't have to.
I'm not going to go there. There's no point. So as far as the question, should one of those guys gotten more number 2 reps last year? I don't think you can justify that because Steve Angeli was your number 2 guy. He deserved the number 2 reps. He was your number 2. I'm fine with them making him number 2 last year. Minchey and Carr got a lot of mental reps last year. They did get some prep reps, things like that. Obviously they got, Minchey got 3 number 3s, things like that. They got practice reps is what they needed. last year wasn't their year. You know what I mean? Like this year is their year. So I'm fine with the way things have progressed.
And they were obviously able to develop over the course of last season with whatever reps they got in practice, whether it was scout team or number 3 or whatever, between the long season and everything else. They were obviously able to develop to the point that the coaching staff felt like they were the top 2 options.
Yeah, I was going to
right now.
That's a great point.
Whether they were getting those reps last year or not.
That is a fantastic point. Ring the bell for Sean Stiers. Okay, that's a fantastic point because whatever they got last year must have been enough because they both outplayed him in the spring. So it must have been enough. So who am I to say that it wasn't?
I'm not surprised that Andrew disagrees, but he says he disagrees. There are countless examples of younger quarterbacks getting first-team practice reps. Arch Manning, Nico, Drew Aller, Bryce Young, etc.
Why would you give them first-team reps in practice?
Well, the other aspect of this is, I mean, there would be no reason to justify first-team reps at practice.
None.
Last year. But the other aspect of this is, even if CJ Carr was getting number 2 reps, I mean, he ended up being out for more than a month and wasn't practicing. So like that wouldn't have even, have done him any good. So
correct. And I'm not ready to compare any of the guys on Notre Dame's roster to any of those guys that he named. Because I don't want any of those guys on my roster. I want the guys that are on Notre Dame's roster.
Yeah, Andrew says all those guys got 4 games
he's saying,
to maintain the red shirts.
You can't. You're all over the board, Andrew. You said they got practice reps. Now you're saying they got into games. So what are we talking about?
Look, I've said this before, and I'll just keep saying it again. Johnny Manziel and Jameis Winston. If you want 2 examples of why this precious experience doesn't matter nearly as much as you think it does, look at those 2 guys. You really don't need to look any farther. They were both redshirt freshmen, never played a single snap because they both played prior to the 4-game rule where you kept your red shirt. They got 0 snaps as redshirt freshmen on the field, 0 experience. And in their first seasons as starting quarterbacks, they both went out, started every game, and won Heisman trophies as redshirt freshmen. So,
and listen,
stop building up a handful of snaps.
That doesn't do anything.
To mean any more than what it is. Like, is it nice if you can get experience? Of course it is. That's why coaches try to if they can. But the bottom line is, like, can you do it or not? Are you talented enough or not? And that's why I have confidence in either one of these guys, because to me, the answer is yes on both accounts. And it's more yes to me with CJ Carr based on what we saw last year. He's just different. He just is.
And you know who got all of those reps that Andrew's referring to? Steve Angeli. How'd that work out for him?
Yeah.
He's not here anymore.
He got all those reps.
He got all of those reps.
The coaching staff still feels like these other 2 guys are the better options right now.
So, look, I get that it can help some people, but, I've been watching a lot of the Steve Angeli highlight tape that everybody has been putting out there about all of the things that he's done in Notre Dame uniform, and it's all great. But you know what else they didn't clip out?
Easy.
I'm just saying they didn't clip out the score at the bottom. That's what I'm saying.
Like
the score,
the situation that got him into the game,
58-7. And he's out there throwing dimes. Like, okay, does that prepare you for the next year? Are those the reps that you're referring to? Because I don't know that actually does anything. I would rather have those guys getting reps at practice against Notre Dame's first team defense.
When you're out there running a layup line,
right? I don't. That's all I'm saying. He got all of those reps that you're referring to, Andrew, and now he's not on the team. So I don't know that helped him all that much.
Right. Again, so does all that really matter that much? I mean, practice matters,
sure.
But ultimately, I think talent and ability, the ability to show that you can do it, I think that matters more than anything. And that's why Notre Dame is where they are right now. at the quarterback position with these two guys, Carr and Minchey, battling for the job right now. And as you said, Steve Angeli's taking visits to Syracuse, and I'm sure he's going to take more.
I'm sure he is. I hope he does. Look, he can start at Syracuse. That'd be awesome. That would be fantastic.
Since we're talking about Angeli, let me just ask you this.
Oh boy, you're hoping not set me up for.
When was the last time Notre Dame had a backup quarterback purely as possible?
Oh man,
as popular as Steve Angeli was.
Man, well, Ian Book was that for a little bit, right? Wasn't he? Was he super popular when he was a backup?
I mean,
I feel like he was until they put him in the game.
But that was like a classic, like you see Wimbush struggle. And so, Book became,
he was that guy at the beginning of 18.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, he was that guy.
Yeah.
But
Andrew Gilmore, Tyler Buckner did have some popularity. I almost go back to,
that's a good one, Christopher. Tommy Checkdown.
Because
remember, he was coming in as like the closer and he was doing all these, like Tommy Reese was a very valued backup. No doubt about it. And
but then as soon as he became the starter, everybody just moaned and groaned and, couldn't stand the guy.
But let's be honest. That's what would have happened here too.
Exactly.
If that would have happened, there would have been
to me, I almost have to go all the way back to Brady Quinn and Carlisle Holiday. Like that's been more than
that's a good
20 years. But that was Brady Quinn, became very, people were all in on Brady Quinn, Quinn to win and all that different kind of stuff. And I think they were making t-shirts, around campus and all that kind of thing. But even this, even that one, was more about lack of performance by the starter. And so maybe because of some of the struggles that Riley Leonard had earlier, maybe that played into it a little bit with Steve Angeli as well, because there were definitely, there were plenty of Angeli backers.
Ever since that blue gold game where he brought the team back.
That's exactly right. The myth, it's almost
that's where it started, man.
He ended up doing more on the field in actual games than Junior Jabby. But
that's true. This is true.
He kind of was a Junior Jabby type of guy. The myth that built up because of one drive at the end of a spring game was
against
Steve
walk-ons and third stringers, man. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
He brought that team to victory. Exciting.
Christopher says
he was never hyped up to play. Never. And that's one of the reasons
except for to Joe. Joe's
that's what I was going to say. That's one of the reasons that Joe was not around very, very much.
That's right.
For a while there. It did not end well.
Drew Pine, was Pine popular?
He was popular with the whole the swagger and but he wasn't a backup. He was the starter. Wasn't? No, or was that Cone that was the starter at that point? He came in and threw. I don't remember.
I don't either.
It all runs together. Bad quarterback play just runs together in my head. That's the problem.
I agree. But it's amazing. I think just how popular a backup quarterback became. And because I just saw, someone still thinks that Angeli would have been the best option. Well, I guess if you were the head coach, you could have swung your weight around that one. But, again, I feel like these coaches who've watched these guys every day in practice for the last couple of years have a much better feel for it than any of us.
Yes.
Even who watched Angeli go out there in a game and the blue gold game. Christopher. Yeah, I know it wasn't Christopher. Christopher Galloway is,
he's come to the light.
One of the biggest Angeli supporters out there, and was, beating the drum for Angeli. And as soon as the blue gold game was over a week ago, was it a week ago today? Was the Monday after the blue gold game. He was the first one to say it,
anybody that watched the blue gold game last year or this year for that matter can see that there is a significant talent difference. And I'm not even talking about the practices that we have an opportunity to see that the public doesn't. Okay. I'm talking about the blue gold game specifically, it's very clear that there's a talent difference. And if you still believe that the guy who decided to leave Notre Dame was the best to start, then I don't know what you're watching. That's all I got to say. That's where I'm at.
That's what it was. Thank you, Mike. You were right.
There we
Pine
go.
came in the Wisconsin
That's
game.
when he did
that's
the
when he was
McGregor.
doing his Conor
Yeah.
McGregor swagger
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, whatever
Yeah.
that was.
Yep.
That's what, yes. Pat Dillingham.
Woo, baby.
Lost all popularity as soon as the Boston College game came around. Any popularity he had was gone when BC ran that ball back the other way.
Man,
Yes.
oh man, oh man.
Mm.
Yep.
Michael says, I have enough confidence in Freeman to think this was the right decision. He's certainly taking a risk. The floor is definitely lower with this decision, but the ceiling is much higher. Absolutely. And, you know,
I agree with that.
Like the fact that, you know, remember last year, the season opener with, you know, the questions going into Texas A&M and the fact that you did have Riley Leonard and the questions with him and, you know, the fact that you had to protect him and, you know, because of the health, you know, like that was our biggest concern with Leonard last year, I think, was his health. Everyone was wanting to consider him, you know, an injury-prone quarterback after having the plate in his foot replaced and all that different kind of stuff. But the safe bet for Marcus Freeman last year was just to start Tosh Baker at left tackle. But that's not the route they went. They went with a completely inexperienced true freshman in Knapp at left tackle, and it worked out, right? Like, Freeman has shown time and time again that he's not just going to go the safe route.
Right, exactly.
And he's going to go with where the upside is. And this is a huge upside move.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, you can say that the floor is higher with Angeli all the way until August 31st. And I won't even argue with you. And that's fine. You can say that Angeli's floor is higher than CJ Carr's. After he gets a start, if he's the starter, after he gets the start in Miami, and they win that game and he plays the way he's going to play, I will then argue that CJ Carr's floor is higher than Steve Angeli's floor. But I will not have that argument until the rest of the fan base can see what he can do with an entire game under his belt, where he will have the exact same amount of experience as Steve Angeli. But until then, like, I won't argue the floor thing, but I will argue it once he gets a start under his belt.
Yeah. So you're saying you're not going to argue.
Like, if you want to say that Angeli's floor is higher, he brings more stability, I'm not going to argue it. That's fine. Watch him play an entire game behind this offensive line and with Mike Denbrock. The floor will not be the same anymore. Like, that CJ Carr's floor will go like this. He'll be on the elevator to the floor, and it will not be Angeli that has a higher floor. And Carr's ceiling will continue to still be higher than Angeli's.
I would agree with that. TD4ND says this is painful discussing the quarterbacks of the past 2 decades. I mean,
it's like bringing up bad memories.
When you think of, man, they won a lot of games with those guys.
Oh, that's great. That is fantastic. That's really good.
Also, you know, again, like, they won 8 games with Drew Pine, you know?
Correct.
And just think about that. Think about that. They won 8 games with Drew Pine and where they are now. And I think that's why you've got to have, you know, faith in these decisions.
But here's the other thing.
Mike says BK was awful at recruiting quarterbacks, just putrid.
Here's the other thing that I will say, because the argument to go with Angeli, one of the arguments that was made was that he's got a really talented team around him, and, you know, that will protect him, basically. I'll use that exact same argument for Carr Minchey. You got a great team around you that you can lean on the run game and you can do all of these different things. And then putting one of those guys at quarterback elevates your team even more. You don't have to protect Angeli. You know what I mean? Like, the same argument, more talent. Like, you don't necessarily make this move to go to Carr or Minchey if the rest of the team isn't as talented as it is, right? If you don't have what you think is going to be a good offensive line, if you don't have what you think is a potential Heisman Trophy winning running back behind you and a 1B right behind him, you know what I mean? You don't make this move, I don't think. But because of all of those things, as a coach, you feel a lot more confident to make a move with a guy that doesn't have any starts under his belt.
Okay, so The Last of Us, Vanishie Starks is here.
All right.
And or is it Vashini Starks?
Sure.
So y'all just don't believe Angeli can improve with a full season of starting, but Carr and Minchey.
He can improve, but not to the extent that the other two will. You can't
because Carr and Minchey are already better than him right now. And that's why, like I said, this is a huge
Syracuse
upside
right now.
move.
Like, I mean, let's call it what it is, right? They are better, and they will then, and they have more to improve because
with less experience.
Their ceilings are higher, so they can improve more. Angeli could improve, sure. His decision making won't get any quicker, and his feet won't get any quicker either. Those things are not going to improve. They're just not. So he's going to be the same guy start to finish. But that's also the argument that people make that want Steve Angeli, is that he's the steady guy. You know what you're going to get from him. They're not willing to make that call right now. And I'm okay with that.
If you want the offense to be fully actualized, you couldn't stick with Steve Angeli. That's like, I've said it a million times, and I think you've said some form of it too. You could win against Notre Dame's schedule. You could win a lot of games with Steve Angeli.
Absolutely.
But is the goal just to win a lot of regular season games or to win a national championship? Because that's the difference, and that's why this move was made when it was made.
Steve Angeli could very realistically get this team to the playoff. But it would probably be a road game, and they probably lose. That's me talking. You can get them there. They can be a top 12 team with Steve Angeli. I have no doubt in my mind, because he'll win the majority of his games. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again,
absolutely.
Fashioning. I don't want to. We had the arguments about Steve Angeli last week, and we're trying to move past that.
I know, but
at this point,
keep bringing it up.
I know. I don't believe, because I don't believe I've ever seen your handle in here.
We appreciate you being
here. Welcome
to
the show, first of all.
Yes.
And, again, we were trying to go a different road, and again, keep it more on Carr and Minchey.
Yes, that's the goal. That was the goal.
we were, but I mean, it's only natural because there are some Angeli holdouts out there. Obviously, I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree, because it's a moot point now. Angeli's gone, and he ain't coming back.
Right,
Angeli's not walking back through that door.
Well, he might on the last home game of the year.
Senior day, he could.
He might be coming back through that door.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
Very true.
Oh, boy. That would be... I'm not missing that one.
Decaf with some breaking news for local fans. Nitro Tuggle, who is a Northwood guy,
Panther.
Northwood High School from just south of South Bend. He was a top 100 recruit, wide receiver for Georgia, and he entered the transfer portal. And apparently, from what Decaf is saying, it's being reported that he is going to Purdue now.
I thought he was in the portal and then got out of the portal, and then he must have gone back in again.
I don't know.
Isn't that what happened? I could have sworn he went into the portal in December and then went back to Georgia, and then apparently must be back in the portal now in the spring. It's a good get for Purdue. And that, to be honest with you, to go off on a tangent here a little bit, Penn, where I work and where my son played, they scrimmaged Northwood the past couple of years. And so I got to see Nitro Tuggle in person a few different times. And, of course, not surprising when you have a kid with talent like that, you try to run your entire offense through him. I never thought he was Georgia talent, but Purdue makes a lot of sense. And I think, sometimes kids get over recruited, you know what I mean? And then they kind of have to figure it out and then get back to probably where they belong. I think Purdue is exactly where he belongs as far as talent level is concerned. So I think this could be a really good fit for him. I think that's a really good fit for him.
I think so as well. I think that, probably program like that was probably, just not his speed. And
now
he's going to have a chance. Another guy we'll see him potentially at Notre Dame Stadium this year.
Yeah. I like this move by him coming back into in-state, where a lot of people know who he is. That doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Kind of coming home to a degree.
Get a chance to be around your family, playing.
Yeah, absolutely. All that kind of absolutely. Stuff. So he was really good for Northern Indiana. And I think staying in Indiana is probably a good call.
Joshua says people wanting Minchey for his legs are the same people who complained about Leonard not passing enough last year. Could be right.
Obviously Minchey can push the ball down the field. He had some nice downfield throws that I don't think he got a lot of help from his wide receivers in the blue gold game. He does add that extra something when it comes to his legs, right? And he knows it. That's why he kind of emphasizes his legs, which he really didn't do in high school, by the way. This has been a since college kind of a situation. That's a really good point. Whoever made that point, that's a really good point.
Vince, I've got a point for you.
I'm ready.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready for rapid fire. Let's go.
Here we go. Fill in the blank. Former Notre Dame safety Kennedy Urlacher transferring to Southern Cal is blank.
It is not surprising. I guess I'll just keep it that way. It's not surprising. I think for the next cycle or two, you're going to see a lot of jump in the portal end up at USC because of the Chad Bowden effect. You know what I mean? Just because look, and I get it. He recruited a lot of those guys. He was like a lead recruiter on a lot of those guys. They're going to go someplace where they feel comfortable. You think Chad Bowden's not going to make those guys feel comfortable, right? And I don't want this to sound like this is an anti Kennedy Urlacher comment, because I love the fact that he was on the team. I think he's a really, really good special teams player. Yeah. I think he could have been a good safety at some point, but he was probably 5th or 6th on the depth chart overall at safety. And USC is plucking our 5th or 6th safety to go to their team.
It'll probably be
that sounds about right.
Number 2 or number 3.
Yeah,
for them.
So
USC going to get our scraps. Yeah,
you know?
It definitely, like to your point about Bowden, like it definitely feels like the timing of this, like the fact that Urlacher went into the portal as early as he did, with still a couple of practices left in the spring, and the fact that he committed just a couple days, basically, 3 days maybe, after going into the portal, and he went straight to USC. It makes a lot of sense. But Bowden he's got as you said, he played a huge part in recruiting guys like Kennedy Urlacher and most of these guys, or a good chunk of the guys on the roster. So he's got a good feel for what Notre Dame's roster looks like, and I'm sure there was no tampering going on.
No,
come on, Sean. The fact that he might be in his ear, and it's like, hey, you have a lot more opportunity out here if you jump in the portal. If things aren't working out for you, and I've seen some people saying, well, why would Kennedy Urlacher go? He was playing last year. He got playing time. Well, the bulk of it was on special teams.
Correct.
And obviously,
pop-up time.
Yeah, he doesn't just want to be a special teams player. He wants to be out there playing his actual position. And he just, like, the emergence of Tay Johnson, to me, felt like
didn't help.
Was just like...
and Don, or Blair.
Jadon Blair.
Blair, sorry. Him coming in, and it just, there's a lot of talent at safety. Let's be honest. Let's call it how it is.
Like where that position has come in just a couple of years is pretty astonishing, really, when 100%. You sit back and look at it. And it's just, as Brandon White says, recruiting better players, and they can't all play. Like I've got, like in terms of, Kennedy Urlacher jumping in the portal, I completely understand the decision. It's just, the USC part of it, like none of us want to, so another guy now we're going to see coming back to Notre Dame Stadium this year, potentially.
That's true.
Kennedy Urlacher with USC. Fill in the blank. It's blank that USC is 12-12 in its last 24 games against Power 5 teams.
It's better than I thought it was. That was my honest reaction when I read that question.
Really?
Better than I thought it
12
was.
is better than you thought it would be?
It was, because they always start off with all this flash and then they kind of fall off. And that's kind of how it's been the last couple of years, it feels like. So yeah, it's better than I thought it was. They had all kinds of issues last year, quarterback and all kinds of stuff going on. And yeah, I thought that they were below 500 when it came to Power 4 teams. I really did. So it's better than I thought. Good for you, Trojans.
Well, remember now, they went to the Cotton Bowl in Lincoln Riley's first year. So I was kind of surprised that it's as low as what it is in the last 24 games.
Because it covers all his entire tenure.
But it's also why Chad Bowden is raiding Notre Dame's roster.
Exactly.
They're making every attempt to raid Notre Dame's roster because they've got to get some talent in there. They've got to replenish it. He knows he recruited a bunch of studs to come to Notre Dame. And so now, he's trying to get them all to go to Los Angeles if he can.
Look,
and I'm sure he's going to try for more as well.
I was going to say, do not be surprised over the next week. Okay, because I know the portal closes on Friday. There's some time where they can still kind of jump in, over the weekend. So in a week, you're going to see more guys jump in the portal from Notre Dame. That's going to happen. So people brace yourselves, right? And don't be surprised if some of those guys end up at USC.
We only have 4 days left of the portal being open.
Correct. But don't be surprised. You're going to see a lot of Hayes Fawcett, things that say Notre Dame to USC, and it's gonna have a little arrow.
I won't be surprised.
That's gonna happen. So everybody just needs to be ready for that. That's what I'll say. Just be ready.
Good point. Good point. Prepping them, Vince, getting them ready.
I'm trying, because I get life is stressful out there. Just it's okay.
We didn't get to talk much about the offensive line last week because of all the portal news. Sullivan Absher played center during the blue gold game, and Marcus Freeman discussed him a little bit afterwards, doing some cross training at Garden Center.
You're going to have to have a couple of those guys that can go in at any position, and Sully's a guy that's played tackle for us, guard and center, and that's the more value you have, the more opportunity you're going to have to play, and that's what we've been trying to do with Sully and some other guys. Just say, hey, is he the next best guy, right? And if you are, it doesn't matter if you're practicing a center, guard, or tackle, you're going to be the guy that goes in. And so he's done a wonderful job at all three positions. We got to continue to get reps at snapping the ball. That's the one thing that we got to, with all of our new snappers, continue to get valuable reps doing that. But I'm really pleased with Sullivan Absher.
All right, Vince, so what do you think about Mr. Absher doing a little cross-training?
I think going into this season, we all kind of thought that Sullivan Absher was going to be in the conversation for one of the starting jobs or in competition to compete for one of those starting jobs. And so that means he's one of the 6 or 7 best offensive linemen at Notre Dame right now. And I think that is basically what he's saying. And if he doesn't end up starting, he's going to be one of those super subs, right? They'll probably have one guy that can do either tackle position. They'll probably have one guy that can do center guard position. You know what I mean? And it sounds like he's going to be that interior guy. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he is one of the 7 best, and he's practicing like that. And they're preparing him like that, which I like.
And he really kind of a guy who sort of came on because we were seeing Otting playing more center in some of the early opportunities we got to get out there at spring. But it was Absher who was with the first team offensive line. And obviously Ashton Craig being injured, so he's out. So that'll be a factor. And kind of curious to see if it, turns into a little bit of a battle during fall training camp, potentially, because as we have seen the last 2 training camps with Joe Rudolph out there, all bets are off, really. Anything can happen. And it sounds like Absher has put himself in the mix. He's a guy who played in every game, last year, a lot of special teams type stuff and, reserve stuff as well. But I agree with what you're saying. He's definitely one of the top 7 guys. And it seems like he's kind of pushing now to get himself, closer to really being in the mix. So good for him. Scale of 1 to 10, because there were some concerns coming out of the spring about the offensive line. What is your concern for Notre Dame's offensive line?
I think the offensive line is going to be very good this year. I think they're Joe Moore Award finalist type potential there. I'm sure that when it's all said and done, I'll still have issues with maybe some of the placement of the offensive linemen, right? But not necessarily who they are. Like, does that make sense? Like, I think there's a lot of talent here. I think Anthony Knapp could be very, very good on this line. He could be. There's always usually a pretty big jump from freshman to sophomore year. I think he's going to see that jump too, as long as he can get back and be, healthy and all of those things, which it appears he is. I think Lambert going down is a blow, no doubt about it. That hurts the competition level of this line. Like, if he was still healthy, I would feel even better about it, being where I think they need to be. But they've still got the bodies to do it, and I think they're going to be a really, really good offensive line. I do
as well. So my concern level is very low. It's like a 2. I think you make a.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the question.
The way you differentiated it is probably right. Like you might nitpick with who's playing where, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be fine. Josh says he's not sold on Knapp at left tackle. I mean, you're not alone. There are a lot of people.
I'm not sold on that either. But
yeah.
He's going to have a really good player right next to him, too.
But, like, with the emergence of Absher, here's the question. Does Absher make a bid maybe for that right guard spot, and does Jagasaw maybe go back out to left tackle?
Definitely possible.
That could be a thing if Absher is good enough. And because I think that was, was Jagasaw strictly playing guard this spring? Was that more an experiment that no one wanted to call it an experiment? Because like Joe Rudolph, when we talked to him, it's like, man, when you watched him in that Penn State game and you saw how good he could be at right guard, it's like, maybe we should explore that a little bit more. So they did explore that a little bit more. But does he become a better option at left tackle if your goal is to get the top 5 guys out there? If Absher shows that he can be, that kind of guy at right guard, I think that, those are the kind of things that maybe, continue to be tinkered with over the course of the summer and into fall training camp. Because again, we've seen some curveballs come about in training camp with that offensive line in terms of who's playing where in each of the last 2 years. And there was, Andrew said that Rudolph did a good job of cross-training Pat Coogan. I would agree with that.
Sure.
He was obviously able to step in and play. But then Michael said, is Craig even going to be ready for Miami? Absher might have to start. That's a legit possibility because, it was an ACL that Ashton Craig had. So, like, some of these other guys, we're not going to know. Like, the one, I guess I won't say it's a good thing, but the one thing about it being an offensive lineman is you don't have to worry about, it's not like a running back or a wide receiver or a linebacker. You don't have to worry about a lot of agilities, right? They're going to wear the knee braces and keep their knee, immobilized as much as possible. And so but that will be, maybe that's something, we're going to get to talk to Marcus Freeman on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I'll log that, maybe kind of ask him, what Ashton Craig's progress is at this point, if I get a chance.
It's a good one.
Good question, Michael.
I think that, like I said, there's a lot of talent there. I would love to see just Anthony Knapp practice at guard, see what he can do on the inside. I would like to see that. I mean, we are all speculating that, he sucks at left tackle. He's obviously a guard. Well, I'd like to see him at guard. I'd like to see him, run through his paces at guard to see if he is actually good at guard. And I'm not saying he's not going to be good at left tackle. I personally think he'd be better on the inside, but I'd like to see it there first. You know what I mean? And obviously, look, they went to the national championship game with him at left tackle. And I realized Riley Leonard was super athletic and all of those things. A lot of stuff going around the internet right now, a lot of videos and stuff. Go back and watch that Jeremiah Love 98-yard run against IU. Anthony Knapp took care of business on that play. You know what I mean? So, we're not talking about the difference between, Anthony Knapp starting and me. You know what I mean? He's still a very good offensive lineman. I just think he's a little out of position. But you know what? There could be a lot of growth between his true freshman year and his true sophomore year. And I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what happens.
I think the biggest thing with him is just being stronger.
Yeah,
Like
agreed.
That's the biggest thing. There are times that he could probably move his feet a little bit better, but again, like how much of that comes with, you're out there as a true freshman, and there are, still some things as a left tackle that you have to be wary of, like stunts and loops and, all those different kind of things, and just getting used to that, and and getting those reps and having that experience, I think, that comes with it. Couple things going back to the last question. The USC stuff. Christopher wants to know, would you call that lazy recruiting by Chad Bowden? Poaching basically all these Notre Dame players.
I actually would not call that lazy recruiting. He built up those relationships.
He put in the work.
You know what I mean?
With, right?
That's his work that he put in. So I actually have no problem with it. As long as he's not tampering and trying to get them to jump into the portal, that kind of thing. Like that's where it gets shady. But if they're going to jump into the portal, I would absolutely give them a call and be like, hey, man, remember that relationship we had? We can do that over here too on the West Coast. And, there's beaches out here, like I would absolutely tap into those relationships. It is not about what it's about who you know. And you're going to go and you're going to see, like somebody said that Steve Angeli, not to bring him up again, but Steve Angeli is going out to Syracuse because his former high school offensive coordinator's on the staff. It's about relationships, man. You're going to go where you're comfortable.
Yep.
So,
and Outbound I would just put that up as you were saying that. He's wondering where Angeli may end up. And that's kind of the news of the day with Steve Angeli, is making a visit to Syracuse. So we'll find out. That puts you and I, Vince, one step closer to getting some free food from Jesse. If that pans out.
I may or may not have had that conversation with my wife before the show. I was like, things are looking pretty good. So start studying the menu. All right.
That's right. Where are we going? Jesse was counting on his wings. I don't know if that's
really was. He was adamant too. Like I believe I was reading you correctly. Like you and I did not jump into that bet. Like with both feet. We were trying to like slow play him a little bit, but he was like adamant about it.
We tried to let him reconsider, and he came all guns blazing.
He really
on
did.
That. You really want in on this?
Okay.
Really?
Here we go.
So TD4ND asking over under 8 wins for LSU. So I just pulled up their schedule.
Okay. I appreciate that because I definitely do not have it.
At Clemson to start things off, then Louisiana Tech, then they host Florida, then Southeastern Louisiana, then at Ole Miss, South Carolina, at Vandy, Texas A&M, at Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, at Oklahoma. So we'll go 3 right off the bat with the 3 FCS schools that they're playing.
3 of them. That's crazy.
Yes.
Wow.
I would bet that their over under is 8.5. Let me go to FanDuel here real quick.
I think 9 is a safe bet. I think 9 is a safe number. I do. Yeah.
It's not a brutal schedule by any means.
No, it's not. And you got enough toss-up games in there. I mean, obviously that Clemson LSU game is going to be a big one, in that week 0 slot. Florida LSU, is that going to be a big game? What's Florida going to look like? LSU should win that game.
Their Vegas over under is 8.5.
Look at you. I'm going to say over. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They are supposed to be better this year than they have been. And, is Ole Miss going to come back to the pack? I don't know. We think Texas A&M is going to be better. What is Alabama going to be? I think I'll say they win 9 games. So I'll take the over.
I think so as well. But 9 games ain't going to cut it.
No, not at all.
He is.
If he only hits 9, he's
shown that he can win 9 games down there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when Notre Dame is winning double-digit games with a first-time starting quarterback this year. Yep. Beefeater says, having lived in both, I can tell Angeli Syracuse is South Bend with hills. I mean,
I don't know if that's definitely not a compliment.
I guess I haven't been outside of Syracuse. I know there are hills outside of town. I know there's even more snow in Syracuse than there is in South Bend.
There's a reason they play in a dome for football.
That. Yeah. Yeah, as Michael says, twice the amount of snow. That's exactly right. Have you ever seen some of those photos from that part of New York
really.
where it's literally, like the snow is like they've plowed a road and a car's driving down it and the snow is literally like
just
10 or 15 feet high. Yeah, it's like a wall on both sides.
Lord.
Yeah.
Good Lord. I mean, they look, LSU should be, I think they're going to be decent this year. They're going to be in the conversation 2/3 of the way through the season. They will still be in the playoff conversation. You know what I mean? It just depends on what Kelly does with that information. Yeah. I would bet you that they will go into the Alabama game at Alabama on November 8th in contention for the playoff. If they win that game, they're still in contention. And if they lose that game, they're out. That's how I see this play.
I mean, they should be competitive in every game.
Absolutely, they
play, and not necessarily be favored in every game that they play. But I think LSU has every reason to believe that
sure
they can beat Alabama this year.
There's
really no team on their schedule that they shouldn't expect that they can win. That
right.
doesn't mean they're going to win them all, but
who knew that they would?
It's a very winnable schedule.
Who knew that the 3-game gauntlet for LSU would be Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Alabama?
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, man.
Fill in the blank. Justin Fields just signed with the New York Jets this offseason, your former Chicago Bears quarterback. He was recently asked about the prospect of the Jets drafting another quarterback this week and how he would react to that. He said he's not interested in rhetorical questions. And that answer, Vince, is blank.
Oh, man. I've been trying to come up with a good answer for this one. Because that answer is basically, he's confident in what he's doing, right? He's a confident dude, and you should be if you're a quarterback. I guess he didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, like that they're going to draft his replacement or whatever. But dude, you signed with the Jets. That's about it's dysfunctional. What do you think is going to happen? They're probably going to draft a quarterback, and they don't even know who they're going to start. You know what I mean? It's just dysfunctional on their side, on that side of their helmets.
First, I do think he meant hypothetical and not rhetorical, but we all get the gist of what he was saying. So I'm not nitpicking. I'm just saying I think that's what he actually meant was hypothetical. But at the same time, I agree. I think it's actually the perfect answer because what is Justin Fields supposed to say to that? It's completely out of his control.
Correct.
It's not like he has any control over who the Jets are going to, any team that he plays for are going to go out and draft. And he's on his third team now, and he's been around for 6-7 years now at this point already. You've got to expect that they're going to be drafting a quarterback at some point, but it's completely out of his control, just like any other position that they draft. He doesn't control that. So what energy should he be, using up worrying about if the Jets are going to draft another quarterback or not? So I thought it was actually a very good response on Justin Fields' part.
You know who he is? He's Brian Drew.
Brian Drew.
The incumbent starting quarterback for the Browns in draft day. Who's sitting there watching the draft, and
right.
when they don't draft a quarterback, he's celebrating. You know what I mean? Because he gets to still be the quarterback.
That's right.
Fun fact that I didn't realize until just now when I looked, 'cause I couldn't remember his name either. I didn't realize that the actor who played Brian Drew was also the actor who played Clark Kent in Smallville.
Really?
I had no idea. Didn't look like him at all because he had his head shaved
and
everything else. He didn't have the locks that he had when he was on that show. And I was
going to say, I remembered a bald guy,
a little older
from draft day.
Yes, he was bald for sure. He shaved it. I had no idea. There you go. That's your small fact of the day.
Dude from Smallville.
All
right. NBA analyst Richard Jefferson went through referee school to get a better feel for what their job is like, Vince, do you buy or sell that all game analysts should be required to do something similar?
I buy that with the biggest buy of the night. Like this is huge. I think this is so smart. I think it is incredibly intelligent to do this because now you can try to put yourself in the shoes of a referee, but with knowledge, like with actual knowledge, because you went through it. Like and I will go further and say, because I saw this firsthand, right? So my son played soccer. And when he got old enough, when you're like 14, you can go through and you can become a referee and you go through the classes and everything. And then you can go ref like little soccer and make some money, right? That's technically like his first job, right? It made him a better player because he knew what refs were looking for because he went through all the training to become a referee.
Interesting.
And he also learned how to speak to referees. So, and like get on their level and speak to them about what they're seeing and what they're not seeing and, things like that.
Not even analysts, players should go do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely intelligent. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not as heavy into the buy as you, but at the same time, I mean, I agree.
I get it.
It definitely serves its purpose. And I think that it would benefit probably all broadcasters, to do something like that. And I hadn't even thought of like what you're talking about with players and how it could benefit them as well. But, like, do referees have to go to like, do they have to call a game, to understand how broadcasters feel,
I get that
watching them?
They don't have to listen to it either, though,
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. But some of them, like you've heard about, some of these referees who get the rabbit ears and stuff like that, who do like who've actually gone at it with, broadcasters and announcers and stuff like that on the sideline. But I definitely think it would be a benefit, like if I had more time and, like if they were just going to put on some kind of clinic, I think that it would definitely be interesting for me to do something like, I'm not an analyst, obviously, but I, do games. I think that there would be a lot of benefit in that of knowing exactly, what officials are looking at and just all the things that you're talking about there. I think that there would be some definite benefit in doing something like that. But requirement, I think that it should be at least encouraged, by the leagues to do it. But like Richard Jefferson also has the benefit of probably being able to fork out a good amount of money to, to go do something like that. If employers like the broadcast companies actually wanted to pay for it, I think I'd definitely jump in on something.
If I was a pro, like a professional play-by-play, and that's all I did, like that was it. You know what I mean? I would consider it. Maybe do some online courses or, something along those lines. I would absolutely consider it just to put myself in different shoes, that kind of a deal. I would also probably do some coaching as well. You know what I mean? And just to immerse yourself in everything that you're talking about so that you have more of a repertoire. To talk
for sure.
About,
For sure. And just gives you more knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. You can never have too much knowledge. You got to be a lifelong learner. Sean Stiers, lifelong learner.
Straight from the Dean of Discipline.
That's all I'm saying.
Be a lifelong learner.
Apparently, I've got homework to do on the Miami team too, according to our chat. So I'll go ahead and get that done. Too.
Oh, are you not as up on Miami as you're
apparently not
right now?
Nope, apparently not. They've got the best offensive line in the country, from what I'm reading.
Oh,
so got to go do my homework, and I will do that. I love homework.
I don't know whether they're, I'm looking easy points. Miami O-line when we're freshmen, now they're juniors. I did see Cam Ward running around quite a bit, for his life last year with that same offensive line,
As did
I guess. But I mean, we'll see.
It's all good.
We'll see. They'll play the game. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here, as always. We're going to do a little NFL draft preview on tomorrow's show. Our old friend Ryan Roberts is going to pop in, and we'll talk a little Notre Dame. draft. We'll talk some of the, like top of the draft, what's going to happen up at the top of the draft in the first round and all that kind of good stuff. And then Jesse's going to be in for rapid fire as well. Hit that like button before you head out, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.